Let's get straight into it. So yeah, last week's an interesting one. It's good to see that my analysis last week and sort of general bias definitely played out. Downside targets have pretty much all been hit, barring obviously this 18,800 zone. A bit bittersweet in the sense that, this is a classic example of trading. Like you can have a really good plan of attack and just not execute according to plan well. So it was an example of where I was probably getting too caught up in the sentiment on feed, and I also knew, it's quite a thin level it's quite a thin region of trade above us here. So I was definitely sort of wary of the fact that you could get squeezed and have to uncover that position unfavorably. So I decided to sort of let it go. But hey, can't win them all. Hope to play better this week. Look, in terms of this week, there's no real formal plan of attack because we have CPI, I think it's on Thursday, and I'm probably not even going to trade on that day, but I guess I can leave some sort of thoughts on it. Typically speaking, markets will hedge into these events, and regardless of whether the print comes in with an expectation or slightly below, you'll probably see some unwinding of those hedges in the volatility market, and the markets will rally. So I guess if there's any sort of silver lining here for bulls, a pullback early on in the week is probably going to be some sort of long setup. Thing is, right now, Bitcoin's kind of in a precarious position because we are sort of still hugging this quarterly value area low that sort of spans 4 months since June. And you don't have to be a genius to see that there is this sort of cluster of liquidity right there. Probably a bunch of long stops that have sort of accumulated over the course of the last few weeks. So I guess the question is now, has the market pulled back enough? And is this the area to sort of start looking for longs in anticipation of that sort of CPI squeeze? Quite personally, I don't want to go into like the minutia here because I'm trying to keep these videos nice and short, but I've analyzed some of the lower time frame data, and it looks like there are quite a lot of bulls still sort of piling in this sort of general region here, probably with that thought in mind. So I'm much more happy to lean back and wait for spikes to short as opposed to trying to step in the way of this and long, at least early on in the week. So the question for me is whether this market, whether we pull back and puke and take out all this, at which point, like I said, you kind of really, given the thinness of this region here, an absence of two-way flow, you would really think that the market would overthrow and take this region out. So I'll definitely be on lookout for a few scenarios. One would be a run of the quarterly value area low floor and a run of these stops, and then some sort of acceptance back above. That would be probably a clean sign to get long again. Another thing that I'm looking for, my ideal scenario would be a puke into this region here, and then leaning on any sort of lower time frame positioning that I deem aggressive. So, ideally what you want to see is a bunch of long stopped out here. OI start to really ramp up as we start to like carve into this area here and see some sort of evidence of absorption occurring. That would probably be the ideal scenario, but these markets are really unforgiving and quite random as well. So it's hard to say whether we're going to get that scenario. But I guess the idea is also confluent with the way the S&P 500 sort of moves as well over the course of the next few days. Kind of a lackluster response, to be frank. The fact that we're sort of grinding back into this, this was quite an abrupt sell-off. I was expecting a move back to 36.50. We got that, but we've sort of just run it all the way down, and we're back here at these lows. So, logically, you would assume these lows are going to get sort of cleaned up, mended in the process. I have these sort of standard deviation bands on, and basically, I believe, if this market pulls back, you kind of, as a bull, want to be, you got to be willing to sort of add into a position down here. So I'm sort of planning with a sort of more substantial pullback in mind, within 3 standard deviations of the mean, and we'll see what we get. But I don't think, famous last words, but I don't think this market is gearing up for a face melting sort of down move, especially into a week like this. But I do believe there could be some hedging and some sort of overthrow through this level that might present a good long setup with Bitcoin. Final thoughts, look, like I said, guys, I mean, whenever you see this sort of excessive ramp up in positioning and price failing to do anything, that's typically a bad sign. We're starting to see another increase in sort of open interest. So it's a mixture of shorts and longs coming into the market. Price is sort of still grinding down. I suppose the grinding down isn't exactly the best thing if you're bullish, because you'd rather see some sort of swift move into a zone rejection, a rejection met there, and then some sort of acceptance above the level. But for now, not much to really report. But yeah, bias for the week, not really any bias per se. The question is, do we pull back and then do we unwind those hedges going into the CPI on Thursday? So with that in mind, be on lookout for potential longs in this 18,500, 18,600 zone if constructive PA occurs, and then probably your best base scenario, if permitted, is a run of these 17s lows and a real test of demand, and some sort of failed auction there. That would be rather bullish in my opinion. So it's going to be an interesting week. Sorry if I didn't really provide any real insight, because quite frankly, it's not one of those weeks that you have opinions that stand. You kind of need to be flexible to what the markets tell you in the now. Hope everyone has a good week, trades well, manage that risk.